The sound of laughter in the obsidian lounge was sharp, cruel, and directed entirely at the girl holding the coffee pot. They saw a stained apron. They saw a nobody. They saw a target for their arrogance. Maybe if you spoke less and scrubbed more, you wouldn't be so pathetic, the man in the Italian suit sneered, tossing a $5 bill on the floor like trash. He didn't know that the woman picking up that bill possessed a mind sharper than his entire legal team combined. He didn't know that the silent man in the corner, Adrian Knight, the city's most elusive billionaire, was watching. And he certainly didn't expect that within 10 minutes that Waitress would dismantle his ego in 5 different languages, leaving the entire room breathless. New York City hummed with a rhythm that only the wealthy could truly dance to. For everyone else, it was a grind, a relentless drumbeat of bills, fatigue, and the constant reminder of what they didn't have. Lydia Vance knew that drumbeat well. It pounded in her temples as she balanced a tray of crystal tumblers and porcelain saucers, weaving through the crowded tables of the obsidian lounge. Located on the 45th floor of the Sterling Plaza, the lounge was a place where deals were struck in hushed tones and fortunes were lost with the shake of a head. It smelled of aged leather, imported cigars, and money. To the patrons, Lydia was part of the furniture, a silent, moving object designed to refill caffeine and alcohol levels. "Excuse me, we've been waiting for our water for 3 minutes." Lydia froze, forcing a polite smile onto her face before turning. The voice belonged to a woman named Vanessa, a junior executive at a marketing firm who treated the waitstaff like a personal punching bag. Sitting across from her was Brock, a man who wore his arrogance like a cheap cologne. "I apologize, miss," Lydia said, her voice steady. "It's been a busy morning. I have your sparkling water right here." She placed the bottle on the table with practiced precision, but as she pulled her hand away, Brock, accidentally, nudged the bottle with his elbow. The water spilled, soaking the white tablecloth and splashing onto Lydia's apron. "Look what you did!" Brock shouted, drawing the attention of the surrounding tables. "Are you incompetent or just stupid?" Lydia's jaw tightened. She knew he had done it on purpose. She had seen the flicker of amusement in his eyes a second before impact. "I'll get a towel, sir." "You do that?" Vanessa laughed, scrolling through her phone. "And try not to mess that up, too. God, where do they find these people? The shelter." Lydia walked back to the service station, her knuckles white as she gripped the tray. They had no idea. They saw a waitress in a uniform that was slightly too big, pulling double shifts to pay for her mother's medical bills. They didn't see the woman who had spent her childhood in embassies across Europe and Asia. They didn't know that before her father's political career was destroyed by a fabricated scandal, Lydia had been a prodigy, discussing philosophy in French and negotiating market prices in Mandarin by the age of 12. She grabbed a stack of fresh napkins, taking a deep breath to center herself. "Don't engage," she told herself. "You need this job. Mom needs the medication." As she returned to the floor, the atmosphere in the lounge shifted. The heavy oak doors at the entrance swung open, and a hush fell over the room. It was the kind of silence that usually accompanied royalty. Walking in was a phalanx of men in dark suits, flanking a figure who looked like he owned the building, because he did. Adrian Knight. At 32, he was a tech mogul and real estate tycoon, with a net worth that made the other millionaires in the room look like paupers. He was handsome in a severe, intimidating way, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to analyze everything they touched. He wasn't alone. Walking with him was a delegation of stern-looking men. Lydia recognized the cut of their suits immediately, Japanese bespoke tailoring. And behind them, a nervous-looking man clutching a briefcase who was sweating profusely. The manager, Mr. Henderson, was practically tripping over himself to greet them. Mr. Knight, we have the private corner prepared as requested. Adrian didn't smile. He just nodded, gesturing for his guests to sit. This needs to go smoothly, he said, his voice low but carrying across the quiet room. The merger with Takayama Industries depends on today. Lydia watched from the corner of her eye as she wiped down Brock's table. Brock, noticing the billionaire, suddenly sat up straighter, puffing out his chest. That's Adrian Knight, Brock whispered to Vanessa, though loud enough for Lydia to hear. I'm actually pitching to his VP next week. We're practically colleagues. Vanessa smirked. Maybe you should go say hi. Show him who the real power players are. Lydia suppressed a scoff. Brock was a remora fish, trying to swim with a great white. But her attention was drawn back to the billionaire's table. Something was wrong. The nervous man with the briefcase, the translator, was fumbling. Mr. Takayama, the elderly head of the Japanese delegation, spoke rapidly, his tone clipped and formal. He was unhappy. Adrian looked at his translator. Well, what did he say about the acquisition timeline? The translator, a man Lydia recognized as a generic agency hire, looked terrified. Mr. Knight, he says, he likes the timeline? He says the weather is good for business? Lydia winced. That wasn't what Mr. Takayama had said at all. He had said, the terms of the acquisition are insulting to the heritage of my company. Adrian narrowed his eyes. He looks angry for someone talking about the weather. Ask him about the equity split. Now, the translator stammered in broken, elementary Japanese. Mr. Takayama's face turned red. He slammed his hand on the table and unleashed a rapid-fire string of sentences that made the translator recoil. He says no, the translator squeaked. No to what? Adrian demanded, his patience snapping. The split? The timeline? Explain. I don't know the specific dialect, sir. He's speaking too fast. Disaster was unfolding in real time. A multi-billion-dollar deal was dying because of a language barrier. At the next table, Brock laughed. Looks like the great Adrian Knight hired a dud. Pathetic. If I were over there, I'd handle it. You don't speak Japanese, Brock, Vanessa giggled. Doesn't matter. It's about dominance. Watch this. Brock stood up, fueled by arrogance and perhaps too much liquid courage. He walked toward the billionaire's table, ignoring Lydia, who was trying to refill his water glass. He bumped into her hard, sending the pitcher flying. Smash! Glass shattered on the floor right next to Adrian Knight's table. The entire room went deadly silent. The sound of shattering glass was like a gunshot in the tense atmosphere of the obsidian lounge. Shards of crystal skittered across the polished marble floor, coming to a rest just inches from Mr. Takayama's polished dress shoes. Lydia fell to her knees instinctively, reaching for the larger pieces. I am so sorry, she whispered, her face burning. You clumsy idiot, Brock shouted, seizing the moment to perform for the audience. He loomed over Lydia, pointing a finger at her. Do you have any idea who you almost hit? This is Mr. Knight. You could have injured a billionaire because you're too incompetent to hold a pitcher. Mr. Henderson, the manager, came running over, his face pale. Lydia, what have you done? Get up, get out of the way. It wasn't her fault. A deep voice cut through the noise. Everyone froze. Adrian Knight was looking at Brock, not Lydia. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were cold. You shoved her. Brock faltered for a second, his confidence wavering under Knight's gaze, but he quickly tried to recover. I was merely trying to approach you, Mr. Knight, to offer my assistance with your situation, and this girl got in the way. The service here is atrocious. You shouldn't have to deal with broken glass while trying to close a deal. Adrian ignored him, turning his attention to the Japanese delegation, who were now standing up, looking offended and ready to leave. The translator was hyperventilating in his chair. Mr. Takayama spoke again, his voice icy. He addressed Adrian in Japanese, gesturing to the chaos, the broken glass, and the shouting Brock. "This is a circus. You surround yourself with fools and disrespectful children. There is no honor in doing business here. We are leaving." The translator looked at Adrian, pale as a ghost. "Mr. Knight." "He wants to go." "Fix it," Adrian growled. "Tell him I apologize for the disturbance." The translator stuttered out a sentence in Japanese that made Lydia cringe physically. He had used the informal, almost rude verb form for wait. It was the linguistic equivalent of telling an elder to hold your horses. Mr. Takayama's eyes widened in shock. He signaled to his associates. They began to gather their papers. "No, no, no!" Adrian stood up, frustration radiating off him. "Stop them!" Brock stepped forward again. "Mr. Knight, seriously, let me call my guy. I know a guy who speaks Chinese. Maybe that's close enough." The ignorance in the room was suffocating. Lydia was still on her knees, picking up glass, but her heart was pounding against her ribs. She couldn't watch this. She couldn't watch a deal this important collapse because of incompetence, and she certainly couldn't listen to Brock's racism for another second. She looked at the glass in her hand. If she spoke up, she would be fired. Mr. Henderson had a strict policy. Staff are seen, not heard. If she intervened, she would lose the tips she needed for her mother's insulin. But then she looked at Mr. Takayama's face, a look of disappointed dignity. It reminded her of her father just before he died. Lydia took a breath. She stood up, brushing the glass shards from her apron. She didn't look at Mr. Henderson. She didn't look at Brock. She looked directly at Mr. Takayama. "Takayama-san," she said, her voice clear and resonant, slicing through the noise. Everyone turned. Brock scoffed. "Oh, great! Now the maid has something to say." "Shut up!" Adrian snapped, his eyes fixed on the waitress. Lydia bowed, a perfect, deeply respectful 45-degree angle, not the shallow nod of a tourist. When she straightened, she spoke. But not in English. She spoke in flawless, formal Keigo Japanese. "Takayama-sama, humble apologies for the indignity you have suffered here today. The chaos of this room does not reflect the immense respect this establishment, and Mr. Knight, holds for you and your esteemed company." The silence that followed was absolute. Mr. Takayama stopped gathering his papers. He turned slowly to face the waitress in the stained apron. His expression softened from anger to shock. "You speak our tongue?" he asked in Japanese. "I have spent time in Kyoto," Lydia replied fluently, her accent indistinguishable from a native speaker. "And I understand that the translator has made grave errors in conveying Mr. Knight's intentions. He did not mean to insult your timeline. He was concerned that the equity split did not favor your family's legacy enough." Mr. Takayama blinked. "He wants to give us more equity?" Lydia turned to Adrian. "Mr. Knight," she said in English, her tone professional, shedding the persona of the submissive server. "Mr. Takayama was under the impression you were insulting his company's heritage. I corrected him. I told him you were concerned about preserving his legacy in the equity split. Is that correct?" Adrian stared at her. For the first time in years, the billionaire looked genuinely surprised. He looked from the terrified translator to the poised waitress. "Yes," Adrian said, recovering quickly. "Yes, that is exactly what I meant." "Tell him." Lydia turned back to the delegation. She spoke for 2 minutes, weaving a complex explanation of financial terms and cultural deference. She used words that the agency translator had probably never even heard of. When she finished, Mr. Takayama sat back down. He smiled. "This is acceptable. We will listen." Lydia turned to Adrian and nodded. "He's ready to listen, sir." Adrian let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 20 minutes. He looked at Lydia with a new intensity. "Don't go anywhere. You're translating the rest of this." "But I have tables," Lydia said, glancing at Mr. Henderson. "Forget the tables," Adrian commanded. He pulled out the chair next to him, the seat of honor. "Sit." "She can't sit there," Brock shouted, unable to contain his jealousy. "She's a waitress. This is ridiculous. She probably learned that from cartoons." Adrian turned his head slowly toward Brock. "Mr. Henderson?" The manager rushed forward. "Yes, Mr. Knight. Remove this man and his guest from the premises, immediately, and ban them for life." "What?" Brock shrieked as security guards materialized. "You can't do this! I know people! I make more in a year than she makes in 10 lifetimes." "And yet," Adrian said calmly, "she just saved a $4 billion merger, and you just spilled water on the floor. Get him out." As Brock and Vanessa were dragged out, screaming protests, Lydia hesitated by the chair. She looked down at her stained apron. "Mr. Knight, I am not dressed for—" "You are the most valuable person in this room right now," Adrian said softly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Please, sit." Lydia sat, and as she began to facilitate the negotiation, switching effortlessly between English and Japanese, she didn't notice the way Adrian Knight was watching her. He wasn't just looking at a translator. He was looking at a mystery he intended to solve. But the Japanese delegation was just the beginning. The night was far from over, and Lydia Vance was about to reveal that Japanese was only the tip of the iceberg. The signing of the Takayama contract took another hour, during which the Obsidian Lounge transformed from a battleground into a sanctuary of high-level diplomacy. Lydia didn't just translate, she mediated. When Mr. Takayama expressed hesitation about the supply chain logistics, Lydia didn't just repeat the words. She softened the blow, phrasing the concern as a strategic desire for perfection, which appealed to Adrian's ego rather than bruising it. When the final signatures were inked onto the heavy bond paper, Mr. Takayama stood up and did something unheard of for a man of his stature interacting with service staff. He bowed to Lydia. "You have a samurai's spirit hidden in a servant's resolve," he said in Japanese. "If you ever come to Tokyo, my doors are open." "You honor me, Takayama-sama," Lydia replied, bowing low. As the delegation left, the silence in the lounge was heavy. Mr. Henderson, the manager, was standing by the service station, his mouth slightly open. He looked like a man whose worldview had just been fundamentally shattered. He had spent 2 years yelling at Lydia for not polishing silverware fast enough, unaware that she could probably negotiate a peace treaty. Adrian Knight didn't leave. He sat at the table, staring at the empty glasses and the signed contract. He tapped his pen against the mahogany surface, his eyes fixed on Lydia as she began to clear the table. "Leave it," Adrian said. "It's my job, sir," Lydia said, keeping her eyes down. The adrenaline was fading, and the panic was setting in. She had exposed herself. People had seen. "Your job just made me $400 million in equity," Adrian said. "Sit down. We need to talk." "I really need to get back to my shift, Mr. Knight. Mr. Henderson is staring. Mr. Henderson will fire himself if I tell him to. Sit." Lydia sighed and sat on the edge of the chair. "Mr. Knight, I appreciate the sentiment, but I just want to do my work and go home." "Who are you?" Adrian asked, ignoring her deflection. "And don't tell me just a waitress. I know fluent Keigo when I hear it. That takes a decade of study or a native upbringing. You have neither the accent of a native nor the resume of a scholar. You're a ghost." "I picked it up," Lydia lied, her heart thumping. I watch a lot of anime. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You learned complex corporate negotiation dialects from cartoons? Try again. Before she could answer, a commotion erupted at the lounge entrance. The heavy doors slammed open, and a large, red-faced man with a thick grey moustache stormed in, followed by two flustered hostesses. "Nein, I will not wait," the man bellowed. "I was told Mr. Knight is here. This is unacceptable. In Berlin, we respect time." Adrian rubbed his temples. "Wagner. I forgot he was flying in tonight. My German is rusty, and my usual translator is currently having a panic attack in the hallway." Herr Wagner, the CEO of a massive German automotive conglomerate, marched up to the table. He ignored Lydia completely. "Herr Knight, you keep me waiting in the lobby like a schoolboy while you drink with—" He glanced at Lydia disdainfully. "The help?" Adrian stood up. "Herr Wagner, my apologies. The previous meeting ran long." "Excuses," Wagner shouted, switching to rapid-fire German, his face turning purple. He started ranting about the disrespect of American capitalism, the inefficiency of Knight's team, and how he was considering pulling his technology patent from their joint venture. It was a tirade filled with technical automotive jargon and insults. Adrian looked lost. He caught about every third word. He opened his mouth to try and calm the man down in English, but Lydia spoke first. "Herr Wagner," she said, her voice dropping an octave, taking on the crisp, authoritative cadence of High German. "Please take a seat. Mr. Knight was not drinking. He was just concluding a difficult negotiation with the Japanese market to ensure that your technology has a secure distribution channel in Asia." Wagner froze mid-shout. He looked at the waitress. "You speak German?" "I grew up in Munich for 3 years. Lydia lied effortlessly in German, adopting the local Bavarian lilt to charm him. "My father admired your engineering. He always said a Mercedes engine was the heartbeat of Europe." Wagner's chest deflated. The flattery, combined with the perfect accent, disarmed him instantly. "He said that?" "He did. Mr. Knight was just telling me that he refused to start the meeting with you until he could give you his full, undivided attention, out of respect for your time. He didn't want to rush a man of your importance." Adrian looked at Lydia. He didn't know exactly what she said, but he saw Wagner's anger evaporate. Wagner smoothed his suit jacket. "Well, that is thoughtful. Perhaps I was hasty." "Please," Lydia gestured to the chair, "allow me to order you a Riesling, the 2018 vintage. It has the dry finish you prefer." Wagner sat down, looking thoroughly pleased. "Excellent. You have a gem here, Herr Knight. A true gem." For the next hour, Lydia didn't just wait tables. She became the axis upon which the room turned. When a confused Italian fashion designer at table 4 needed to know if the veal was gluten-free, Lydia explained the menu in lyrical Italian, discussing the chef's sourcing from Tuscany. When a lost tourist couple from Brazil wandered in looking for the observation deck, she gently directed them in Portuguese. By 10 p.m., the Obsidian Lounge wasn't watching the Billionaire. They were watching the Waitress. She moved through the room like a conductor, switching languages with a fluidity that was almost supernatural. Adrian Knight watched it all. He hadn't touched his drink. He had taken out his phone and was texting his head of security, a man named Kane. Text to Kane. "Find out everything about a waitress named Lydia at the Obsidian Lounge. I want a file on my desk by morning. No stone unturned. She's not who she says she is." He looked up as Lydia approached his table with the check. She looked exhausted. Her hair was fraying from her bun, and there were dark circles under her eyes that the adrenaline had hidden earlier. "The show is over, Mr. Knight," she said quietly. "Herr Wagner is happy. The Italians are eating. Can I go now?" Adrian took the check but didn't look at it. He pulled a black titanium card from his wallet and placed it on the tray. You speak 5 languages, Adrian stated. Japanese, German, Italian, Portuguese, and English. And you speak them at a diplomat's level. I have a good ear, Lydia said, looking at the floor. Stop lying to me, Adrian said, his voice low but intense. People with good ears don't understand international equity law or automotive patent disputes. You are hiding, Lydia. The question is, who are you hiding from? Lydia's hand trembled slightly as she took the card. That's none of your business, sir. I'm just a waitress. Not anymore, Adrian said. You're fired. Lydia's head snapped up, terror filling her eyes. What? No, you can't. I need this job. My mother. She stopped herself. You're fired from being a waitress, Adrian corrected, because I'm hiring you. My executive liaison just quit. You start tomorrow. Triple your current salary. Full benefits. And a signing bonus that will cover whatever debt is making you look so terrified right now. Lydia stared at him. It was the lifeline she had prayed for. It was enough money to move her mother to a private facility. It was safety. But it was also the spotlight. And the spotlight was the one place Lydia Vance could not afford to be. I can't, she whispered. Adrian looked stunned. Excuse me. I can't take the job. Thank you for the offer. But I can't. She ran the card, dropped the receipt, and fled towards the kitchen before he could say another word. Adrian sat there, baffled. He was Adrian Knight. People didn't say no to him, especially not waitresses who needed money. He picked up his phone. Kane had replied. Text from Kane. Boss, you need to see this. Her name isn't Lydia Smith. It's Lydia Vance, daughter of Charles Vance. Adrian's blood ran cold. Charles Vance, the disgraced diplomat who had supposedly sold state secrets 5 years ago and then committed suicide in a federal prison, the man whose family had been blacklisted from every industry in the country. Adrian looked at the kitchen door where she had vanished. Well, he muttered to himself. This just got complicated. Lydia sat in the locker room, her hands shaking as she unbuttoned her uniform. The other waitresses were ignoring her, the jealousy in the room palpable. They had seen her chatting with the billionaire, seen the way he looked at her. They thought she was flirting. They didn't know she was fighting for her life. He knows, she thought. He suspects. I was too loud. I was too visible. She opened her locker, revealing a small, framed photo taped to the inside of the door. It was an old picture. Her father, smiling, holding her hand in front of the Eiffel Tower. He looked so proud. That was before the accusations, before the freezing of their assets, before the friends disappeared. You okay, Lyd? Lydia jumped. It was Barb, an older waitress who was the only person here who treated her with kindness. I'm fine, Barb. Just a long night. I heard you speaking that fancy talk out there, Barb said, leaning against the lockers. You got secrets, honey. We all do. But be careful with men like Knight. They don't help girls like us without wanting something. I know, Lydia said, shoving her apron into the bag. I'm not taking anything from him. She hurried out the back exit into the cool night air of the alleyway. She pulled her hood up, clutching her purse tight. She had to get to the hospital. Her mother's dialysis treatment was tomorrow, and she was short on the copay. As she turned onto the main avenue, a black SUV rolled slowly alongside her. The window rolled down. Get in, Lydia. It wasn't a request. It was Adrian Knight. Lydia kept walking, picking up her pace. Leave me alone, Mr. Knight. I told you, I don't want the job. The car kept pace. I know who you are, Vance. Lydia stopped dead. The name hit her like a physical blow. She turned to the car, her face pale under the streetlights. You checked up on me, she accused, her voice trembling. I check up on everyone who interests me, or confuses me, Adrian said. The The car stopped, and he got out. He towered over her on the sidewalk, but his posture wasn't threatening. It was protective. Charles Vance's daughter, the prodigy. You disappeared 5 years ago. The press said you went to Europe. The press says a lot of things, Lydia said bitterly. Most of them lies. Are you going to turn me in? I haven't done anything wrong. My father didn't do anything wrong. I don't care about your father right now, Adrian said. I care about the fact that you have a brilliance that is rotting away in a coffee shop because you're afraid of your own name. You don't understand, Lydia said, backing away. It's not just the reputation. It's the people who destroyed him. They're still out there. If they know I'm here, if they know I'm working for someone powerful, they'll come for me. They'll come for my mother. Adrian stepped closer. Who are you afraid of? Use your resources, Mr. Knight, she spat. Who benefited when my father fell? Who bought his assets for pennies on the dollar? Adrian frowned. He knew the history. The Vance scandal had shaken the geopolitical world. But the beneficiary? He racked his brain. The assets had been acquired by a holding company called Obsidian Corp? No. Vanguard? Sterling, Adrian whispered. Sterling Global. Lydia's eyes widened. Go home, Mr. Knight. You're swimming with sharks, but you don't know who the megalodon is. She turned to run, but Adrian grabbed her arm. Not roughly, but firm enough to stop her. Sterling Global is my biggest competitor, Adrian said. Their CEO, Richard Sterling, is the man trying to tank my deal with the Japanese. He's the one who sent that translator today. Lydia froze. What? The translator, Adrian said, his mind racing, connecting the dots. He wasn't incompetent. He was sabotage. Sterling planted him to blow the deal. You didn't just translate, Lydia. You stopped a corporate assassination. Lydia looked at him, the realization dawning on her. If Sterling knows I helped you, then you are already a target, Adrian finished. You can't go home, not tonight. My mother is at the hospital, Lydia said, panic rising. I have to go to her. We will go to her, Adrian said. Get in the car. I can't trust you. You have no choice, Adrian said grimly. Because look across the street. Lydia looked. Parked half a block down was a grey sedan. 2 men were sitting inside, watching them. As soon as Adrian pointed them out, the sedan's headlights flicked on. They've been following you? Adrian asked. I don't know. Maybe. Get in the car. This time, Lydia didn't argue. She dove into the back seat of the SUV. Adrian jumped in beside her and slammed the door. Go! He shouted to the driver. Lose them! The SUV peeled away from the curb, just as the grey sedan screeched out to follow. What is going on? Lydia cried, gripping the leather handle. Why are they following me now? I've been invisible for years. You stopped being invisible the moment you humiliated Brock and saved my deal, Adrian said, looking out the back window. Brock works for Sterling. Didn't you know? Lydia gasped. The arrogant man in the lounge. He said he was pitching to you. He was lying. He's a mole. He probably called Sterling the second you started speaking Japanese. He told them Charles Vance's daughter is back on the board. The car swerved through traffic, running a red light. We need to get to your mother, Adrian said, pulling out his phone. I'm moving her to a private wing at St. Jude's under a pseudonym, and you are coming to my estate. I can't live with you. You're not living with me. You're entering protective custody under the guise of employment, Adrian said, his eyes hard. Congratulations, Lydia. You just accepted the job. Lydia looked out the window at the blurring city lights. Her quiet life of hiding was over. She had stepped out of the shadows to serve justice in 5 languages, and now the shadows were fighting back. If we survive this, Lydia said, her voice steeling. "I want a raise." Adrian looked at her, and, for the first time that night, a genuine smile touched his lips. "Deal." But as they sped toward the hospital, neither of them knew that Richard Sterling was already making a call to a man known only as the Cleaner, the same man who had visited Lydia's father in his cell the night he died. The game had just begun. The extraction of Lydia's mother, Martha, was performed with the precision of a military operation. Adrian Knight didn't just have money. He had an infrastructure that rivaled small nations. Within 20 minutes of their arrival at the public hospital, Martha Vance was transferred into a private ambulance, flanked by 2 security vehicles, and whisked away to a specialized wing at St. Jude's that Adrian essentially funded. Lydia sat in the back of the SUV as they drove toward the outskirts of the city, her phone clutched in her hand. She had just spoken to her mother's nurse. Stable, resting, safe. "She's fine," Adrian said, breaking the silence that had stretched for miles. "My private doctors are the best in the world. They won't let anyone near her who isn't vetted by Kane." Lydia looked at him. The adrenaline of the car chase had faded, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. "Why are you doing this? It can't just be about a business deal." Adrian looked out the window at the passing tree line of his estate. "I hate bullies, Lydia, and I hate wasted potential. Richard Sterling is both." He turned to her. "And maybe I see a bit of myself in you. Fighting a war no one else can see." The car turned through massive iron gates, winding up a long driveway to a sprawling modern mansion of glass and steel perched on a cliffside. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress of solitude. Inside, the house was stark, minimalist, and breathtaking. But Lydia didn't have time to admire the architecture. Adrian led her straight to a room that looked like a command center. Screens covering the walls, scrolling data, news feeds, and stock tickers. "This is where we work," Adrian said. He tossed a tablet onto a glass table. "Tomorrow night is the Global Trade Summit. Every major player in tech, energy, and government will be there, including Richard Sterling." Lydia froze. "You want me to go there? He knows who I am now. He'll have me arrested. Or worse." "He won't touch you," Adrian said, walking to a sideboard and pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He slid one toward her. "Because you won't be walking in as Lydia Vance, the daughter of a traitor. You'll be walking in as Lydia Vance, the senior international liaison for Knight Industries. And if he attacks you, he attacks me." "He destroyed my father with rumors and fake evidence," Lydia said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "He doesn't need to attack me physically. He'll whisper in the right ears, and I'll be pariah before the appetizers are served." "Then we change the narrative," Adrian said. He tapped a button on the table, and a holographic screen flared to life. It displayed a complex web of documents. "I've had my team digging into the suicide note your father left. The official report says he confessed to selling state secrets to a foreign entity." "He didn't," Lydia said instantly. "He loved this country." "I know," Adrian said softly. "Look at the text of the note." Lydia stepped closer. She hadn't looked at these words in 5 years. It was too painful. But now, with Adrian standing beside her, she forced herself to read the scanned image of her father's handwriting. "My dearest Lydia, the burden of these truths is too heavy. I have failed to translate the needs of my heart to the world. The silence of the winter garden is my only solace now. Seek the truth where the sun sets in the west." "It reads like a depressed man's final words," Adrian said. "The police closed the case in an hour." Lydia's eyes narrowed. She read it again. Then she read it in French, then in Mandarin. She reread the phrasing. "The silence of the winter garden," she whispered. "My father hated winter, and we never had a garden. Exactly, Adrian said. It's a code, Lydia realized, her heart pounding against her ribs. He taught me ciphers when I was 10. We used to play games with book codes. She grabbed a digital stylus and circled the words Winter Garden. In the diplomatic corps, Winter Garden was the nickname for a specific, secure server in the Swiss embassy. It was where the frozen assets and black book deals were stored. She looked at Adrian, her eyes wide. He wasn't confessing. He was telling me where he hid the evidence. Adrian smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. And that is why I need you. Not just to translate languages, Lydia, but to translate him. If we can access that server, we don't just clear your father's name, we bury Sterling. But we can't access a Swiss embassy server from here, Lydia said. No, Adrian agreed. But the Swiss ambassador will be at the summit tomorrow night. And he is a man who loves to talk, if you speak his specific dialect of Romansh. Romansh? Lydia blinked. Hardly anyone speaks that. It's an ancient dialect in the Grisons canton. Except you, Adrian stated. Yes, Lydia admitted. I spent a summer in the Alps. Perfect. Adrian walked over to a rack of clothing that had been wheeled in by a silent assistant. He pulled back the cover to reveal a gown that shimmered like liquid midnight. It was elegant, severe, and undeniably powerful. Wear this, Adrian commanded. Tomorrow you aren't the victim. You are the hunter. You're going to charm the Swiss ambassador, get the access codes to the Winter Garden, and then we are going to burn Richard Sterling's empire to the ground. Lydia touched the fabric of the dress. For 5 years, she had worn stained aprons and oversized hoodies. She had made herself small. She had made herself quiet. She looked at the reflection in the glass window. She didn't see the waitress anymore. She saw the daughter of Charles Vance. I'll do it, she said, her voice turning into steel. But if we take him down, I want the first swing. Get some sleep, Lydia, Adrian said. You're going to need it. The grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel was a sea of black ties, diamonds, and sharks. The air conditioning was set to a brisk 68 degrees, but the room was hot with the friction of egos rubbing against each other. Richard Sterling stood near the center of the room, holding court. He was a handsome man in a plastic way, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was currently laughing at a joke made by a senator, his hand resting possessively on the shoulder of his trophy wife. So I told him, Sterling boomed, if you want the contract, you better learn to speak American. The group laughed obsequiously. Then the laughter died. It started at the entrance and rippled inward, a wave of silence spreading through the crowd. Sterling turned, annoyed that the attention had shifted. Adrian Knight had arrived. That was expected. But the woman on his arm was not. Lydia Vance walked into the room, not as an accessory, but as a force of nature. The midnight blue gown fit her like a second skin, high-necked and long-sleeved, yet infinitely more alluring than the revealing dresses around her because of the way she carried herself. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, intricate braid, exposing the sharp line of her jaw. She didn't look down. She looked straight ahead. Is that, someone whispered, is that the Vance girl? It can't be. She's gone. It is. Look at her eyes. Sterling's glass nearly shattered in his grip. He stared at her, his face draining of color. He motioned for his head of security, a man named Grigori, the one Lydia knew as the cleaner. Why is she here? Sterling hissed. I thought you said she was scared off. She was, Grigori grunted. Knight must have got to her. Fix it, Sterling snarled. Humiliate her. Make her leave before she talks to anyone. Across the room, Adrian leaned down to Lydia. Steady. Everyone is looking. Let them look, Lydia said, her voice calm despite the hurricane in her chest. "Where is the ambassador?" 2:00, near the ice sculpture. He's the one looking bored." Lydia disengaged from Adrian and began her approach. But before she could take 5 steps, Brock, the man from the coffee shop, stepped into her path. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than her mother's car, and he had a cruel smirk on his face. "Well, well," Brock sneered, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "If it isn't the coffee girl, did you sneak in through the service entrance? I think the coat check needs help." A few people chuckled nervously. Lydia stopped. She looked at Brock with an expression of mild amusement, as if he were a toddler throwing a tantrum. "Hello, Brock," she said smoothly. "I see you're still trying to punch above your weight class. Did you ever figure out the difference between equity and assets? Or are you still letting your daddy's money do the thinking?" Brock flushed red. "You listen to me, you little—" "No, you listen," Lydia interrupted, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a terrifying chill. "I am not serving coffee tonight. I am serving retribution. So unless you want me to loudly explain to your wife exactly where you were last Tuesday night, based on the phone call you took in the lounge while I was refilling your water, I suggest you move." Brock's eyes bulged. He scrambled out of her way like a frightened rat. Lydia didn't break stride. She reached the Swiss ambassador, Herr Gunther, who was indeed looking bored as he swirled his wine. "Evening light falls heavy on the mountains, does it not?" Lydia said softly. She didn't speak in English or German. She spoke in Romansh, the obscure, lyrical dialect of his childhood village. The ambassador dropped his glass. Fortunately, it was empty. He spun around, his eyes wide. "By the saints! Who speaks the valley tongue here?" "A friend of the mountains," Lydia replied in the same dialect, smiling warmly. "My father took me to St. Moritz often. We loved the silence of the winter." The ambassador's face lit up with genuine delight. For 20 minutes, they spoke intimately, ignoring the powerful men trying to interrupt. Lydia charmed him completely, weaving nostalgia with intellect. Finally, she leaned in. "Ambassador, I have a strange request. My father, Charles Vance, he left something in the Winter Garden, a digital memory. I wish to retrieve it, for sentimental reasons, to clear the air." The ambassador stiffened slightly at the name Vance. "The Winter Garden is restricted. Diplomatic immunity applies to those servers." "I know," Lydia said, her eyes pleading. "But he is dead, Herr Gunther, and the key to his soul is in there. I don't want state secrets. I just want his last words. Please, give me the access key for the night, for the sake of the valley." The ambassador looked at her, then at the sharks circling the room. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin, metallic card. "It rotates every 12 hours, he whispered. "You have until midnight. Be careful, child. The snow hides deep crevasses." Lydia took the card, her hand trembling. "Thank you." She turned to signal Adrian, but she found her path blocked again. This time it wasn't Brock. It was Richard Sterling. He stood with 2 large security guards, blocking her exit to the terrace where Adrian was waiting. "Lydia Vance," Sterling said, his voice oily and loud. The room went silent again. "I must say, you have some nerve showing your face here, after what your father did to this country." He was playing the patriot card. He wanted the crowd to turn on her. "My father was a patriot," Lydia said clearly, her voice ringing through the hall. "He was murdered by cowards who hid behind lies." "Murdered?" Sterling laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "He was a traitor who took the easy way out, and now you're here, seducing billionaires and ambassadors, probably trying to sell whatever secrets he had left. Security. He gestured to his guards. Escort Ms. Vance out. She is a security risk. The guard stepped forward. Adrian started to push through the crowd, but he was too far away. Lydia didn't flinch. She looked at Sterling, and then she looked at the microphone stand on the small stage next to them, where the band had been playing. She lunged, not away from the guards, but toward the stage. She grabbed the microphone. "Stop!" she commanded. Her voice boomed through the speakers. The guards hesitated. "Mr. Sterling thinks I am a security risk," Lydia said, addressing the entire room. "He's right. I am a risk. To him." She pulled the ambassador's keycard from her clutch and held it up. "This isn't a weapon. It's a key. A key to a server that contains the unedited recordings of the meetings my father had before he died." Sterling's face went white. He knew about the recordings. He thought they had been destroyed. "You're bluffing!" Sterling shouted. "Get her off the stage." "I'm not bluffing," Lydia said, her voice steady. "And I don't need the server to tell you what he found, because I have a very good ear." She looked directly at the Japanese delegation, standing near the back, the same men from the coffee shop. Then she looked at the German delegation, then the Chinese. "Mr. Sterling," she said, switching effortlessly to Japanese. "You told the Takayama group that the environmental regulations were merely suggestions and could be bribed away." The Japanese CEO gasped. Lydia switched to German. "You told Herr Wagner that his steel was inferior, but you would buy it if he laundered money through your subsidiary in the Caymans." Wagner dropped his cigar. Lydia switched to Mandarin. "And you promised the Minister of Trade that you would sabotage Adrian Knight's infrastructure project to ensure your own monopoly." The room was in chaos. People were shouting. Sterling was lunging for the stage, his composure gone. "Shut her up, she's lying." "Am I?" Lydia asked in English. "Because my father recorded those exact offers 5 years ago, and tonight I'm going to upload them to every news agency on the planet." Adrian had reached the stage now. He stood in front of Lydia, blocking Sterling's path. He looked at his rival and smiled. "You heard the lady, Richard," Adrian said. "She speaks your language, and apparently she speaks everyone else's too." Sterling looked around. The room had turned. The foreign delegations were furious. The senator was backing away. He was ruined, but Sterling wasn't done. He pulled a phone from his pocket. "You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with. If I go down, I take everything down." He hit a button on his phone. Suddenly, the lights in the ballroom flickered and died. The emergency alarms began to scream. The heavy blast doors of the hotel began to seal shut. "He's locking us in," Adrian shouted over the noise. "Kane, get Lydia out!" "No!" Lydia grabbed Adrian's arm. "The server. He's trying to jam the signal so I can't upload the files." "Forget the files," Adrian yelled. "He's going to hurt you. I'm not leaving without clearing my father's name," Lydia screamed back. In the darkness, lit only by the strobe of the fire alarm, Lydia Vance wasn't running. She was pulling out her phone, jamming the ambassador's key into a portable reader Adrian had given her. She had to upload the data before Sterling's jammers cut the connection. She had to type the code, the Winter Garden code. But as her fingers flew across the screen, a hand grabbed her hair and yanked her back. It was Grigori, the cleaner. "Translation over?" he whispered in her ear. The ballroom was plunged into chaotic darkness, illuminated only by the strobe light pulses of the fire alarm. Panic erupted among the guests, but for Lydia, the world narrowed to the cold steel of a gun pressed against her ribs. Grigori, the hitman, dragged her toward the service exit. "Drop the phone," he hissed, "or I end this right now." Lydia's heart hammered. Sterling's signal jammer had frozen her upload at 20%. She couldn't send the files to the cloud, But she realized she didn't need the internet to reveal the truth. She just needed the room to hear it. She heard Grigori whisper a command to his partner near the door in a rare, localized Serbian dialect. Lydia didn't fight with muscle. She fought with her mind. She screamed, not in English, but in that same commanding Serbian dialect. "He is lying! Shoot him now!" The partner, confused by the authoritative native command in the dark, fired blindly. The bullet missed Lydia, but shattered a monitor near Grigori's head. He flinched, his grip loosening just enough. Lydia dropped to the floor, scrambling through the dust toward the stage. "Lydia!" Adrian shouted, tackling Grigori into the drum kit with a crash of cymbals. While the men fought, Lydia grabbed the analog AUX cable from the podium, the only connection the jammer couldn't block. She jammed it into her phone. A high-pitched feedback screech tore through the room, silencing the screams. She hit play. The voice of Charles Vance boomed through the speakers, crisp and undeniable. "I am meeting with Richard Sterling. He threatens to frame me for treason if I do not hand over the encryption keys." Then, the smooth, arrogant voice of Richard Sterling filled the hall. "It's not treason, Charles. It's business. Give me the codes, or my man Grigori will write a very creative suicide note." The emergency lights flickered off, replaced by the harsh glare of the main house lights. The silence was absolute. Sterling stood frozen in the center of the room, exposed. "It's a fake!" Sterling screamed, backing away. "It's AI!" The doors burst open. "FBI! Nobody move!" Kane, Adrian's head of security, led a tactical team into the room, guns drawn. Sterling turned to sprint toward the terrace, but Adrian Knight stepped into his path. Sterling threw a desperate punch, but Adrian caught it in his palm effortlessly. "That," Adrian said coldly, twisting Sterling's arm behind his back, "was for the coffee." He shoved the disgraced tycoon to the floor as agents swarmed him. Lydia sat on the stage, the phone still in her hand. It was over. The weight of 5 years vanished. The Swiss ambassador stepped forward through the stunned crowd, bowing low to her. "The valley is proud," he whispered in Romansh. Lydia managed a weak smile. "The snow has melted, Ambassador." The New Deal. 3 weeks later, the morning sun hit the pavement of Fifth Avenue. The Vance vindication was the biggest story of the decade. Charles Vance had been posthumously pardoned, and his daughter had reclaimed her name. Lydia walked into the Obsidian Lounge. She wasn't wearing a stained apron. She was wearing a cream-colored business suit that radiated confidence. Adrian Knight was waiting at the corner table. "You're late," Adrian smiled. "I was at the hospital," Lydia said, taking a seat. "Mum is officially in remission. We're moving her to the new house tomorrow." "Good." Adrian slid a thick leather folder across the table. "Then you'll have time for this." Lydia opened it. It was a partnership contract for Knight and Vance Global Consulting. "I don't need a translator anymore, Lydia," Adrian said earnestly. "I need a partner. Someone who can read the room before I even walk into it. Someone who can tell me when a billionaire is lying in Serbian." Lydia looked at the contract. It was a life of influence, travel, and power. It was everything she had once lost. "There's one condition," Lydia said, closing the folder. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "More equity?" "No," Lydia said, pointing to the coffee station where a new, nervous waiter was working. "I never want to serve coffee again." Adrian laughed, a real, unburdened sound. "Deal." Lydia picked up the pen and signed her name. Not Lydia Smith, but Lydia Vance. "Now," Adrian said, checking his watch. "We have a meeting with the Italian Prime Minister in an hour. He's notoriously difficult." Lydia stood up, smoothing her jacket. Her eyes sparkled with the thrill of the game. "Lascia faire a me," she said in flawless Italian. "Leave it to me." She walked toward the door, not behind the billionaire, but right beside him. The waitress was gone, the diplomat had returned, and the world was finally ready to listen. What an incredible journey for Lydia. From being humiliated as a waitress to taking down a corrupt empire, she proved that true power isn't about money. It's about resilience and the courage to speak up. Lydia didn't just translate languages, she translated her pain into power. I hope you enjoyed this dramatic story of justice and redemption. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this with a friend who loves a good underdog story. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next dramatic narration. What would you have done in Lydia's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.